IVM.
Storytel is an audiobook platform that lets you hear hundreds of thousands of stories on your mobile, on your PC, wherever you prefer. You can get a great deal by signing up at the URL storytel.com/IVM. So this week I'm going to recommend Watership Down by Richard Adams. It's a quirky book. It's the story of a group of rabbits, how they face the destruction of their den and subsequent escape and journey to their new home. It's funny, it's heartwarming, really cool. It's basically Exodus with rabbits. I think you'll enjoy it if you haven't read it before. And let me tell you a little bit about where you can go get it. Go get it at storytel.com/IVM. And you know what will happen? If you go and sign up on this link, you'll get your first month for just 99 rupees a month instead of 299. That's 200 bucks off. Go get this book right now. You'll really enjoy it.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello and welcome to All Things Policy. I'm Sunila, and for today's episode, we are going to be talking about DNA Technology Regulation Bill, which was introduced in Lok Sabha in 2019 and referred to the Parliamentary Standing Committee in October 2019. And on 1st February, the Standing Committee released a report pointing out the faults in the bill and how the bill can better address the regulation of DNA technology. Now, as per my understanding, this bill is for the purpose of regulation of use and application of DNA technology for establishing identity of missing persons, victims, offenders, and unknown deceased persons. Now, today I have with me Shambhavi Naik, who has worked on the Standing Committee's report. So, hi Shambhavi.
Hey Sunila, so I haven't worked on the report per se. It's just that I was I was one of the witnesses who deposed before the committee with comments on how the bill could be strengthened.
Okay. So would you like to tell us more in detail about the bill? Like, what does the bill have provisions for exactly?
Right. So this bill is titled the DNA Technology Use and Application Regulation Bill 2019. This bill has been around in various forms in Parliament for a long time. I think the first ever version was introduced in 2003. And it has undergone a lot of iterations, a lot of changes. It has received a lot of comments from civil society as well as the Law Commission, etc., etc. And what we are seeing in 2019 bill is a refined version of those previous bills. It mainly sets out to do two things. It wants to regulate the DNA profiling that is done in the country. So it is not that DNA technology is not used for identifying people for now. It has been used for a long time. But there is no rigorous standards. There's no universal standards that the entire country has to follow. And so what the bill does do is kind of create those standards that all labs who do DNA profiling will have to follow. So that's one part. And the other part is that it seeks to form data banks. So these databases are supposed to house DNA profiles from people who are either a suspect who might have been at a crime scene, samples which have been collected from a crime scene, offenders, relatives of missing persons, or deceased human remains. And the idea is to have this data bank at the national and regional levels that would allow people to do two things. Either if you have a DNA sample from a deceased remain, and a relative comes and gives their sample or gives a sample of the missing person per se, those can be matched and the remains can be identified. That's one part. Similarly, it can be used for suppose there's an air crash or there are earthquakes and remains cannot be identified. In that case, this particular technology could be used. So that's one point. The other is if you have a criminal who's a repeat offender. So they have done one offense, their DNA is in the data bank, and they do a repeat offense and their DNA is captured again you could actually identify that this person was on the crime scene based on that DNA, right? So there's supposed to be two benefits of having the DNA data bank. So that's it in total what the bill tries to do. A, establish regulations on how DNA profiling should be done, and B, create a data bank with the idea that we expedite justice by either ensuring disease remains get identified or missing people get identified, and B, decrease repeat offenses in the country.
That's interesting. But before we get into the details of the problems associated with the bill, I want to ask a basic question. So, before the bill, how was it kind of regulated? Like, there were no regulations at all, is it?
No, so we do have regulations. We have forensic standards which have to be followed in the lab for people to do stuff. It's just that this was going to be kind of this national law to be put into effect. The other thing that I think was spoken about in Parliament when the bill was first introduced was the idea that a lot of the medical labs which take samples might be storing them, might be doing DNA profiling, and those also need to be scrutinized. This bill does not actually answer that question at all. It was something that was used to justify the bill, but I don't see how this bill will impact that standard at all. We do need a separate law to make sure that uh, patient privacy and sample integrity is maintained.
So this bill talks about establishing various indices when it comes to data banks, right? Can you tell us more about those indices?
Right. So, what this bill basically does is kind of create categories for storing DNA profiles from that are derived. So, you have offenders, suspects, under trials, missing persons, unknown deceased persons, and victims. And the idea is that when the DNA laboratory which does the sequencing creates the profile, and these profiles get saved uh, to another particular category. There's also crime scene index. So crime scene index category, and the idea is then when you find a victim's DNA, you can match it against either the suspect or the offenders list and figure out if there's a match. It's pretty straightforward for a missing person, but we're not quite sure on how it will work for other cases.
Right. So speaking of this indices, like speaking of the crime scene index, the report has raised the concern that, like, it is not necessary that all of the DNA found at the crime scene will belong only to the criminal. It may belong to anyone, like even the person who was not present at the crime scene, and it might make its way into the crime scene index. So how should that concern be addressed?
Yeah, the crime scene profile is really interesting because DNA is stable for a long time. So you could have like passed by a shop in the morning. There might have been a crime that has happened there later in the evening, but they'll still find your DNA there, right? So
Right.
it's not that you were not at the crime scene. You were not there at the scene when the crime was committed, and it could also be very strangely like someone might have dropped a handkerchief or like really random things, and the DNA can actually land up in the data bank. Obviously for the crime scene you don't know whose DNA it is.
Hmm.
So you're at that point of time just putting in strings of information with no identity. uh, but the utility of that is really not well understood, and I don't really see the point of putting all of that in the permanent data bank. I mean, you could keep it for the case and then destroy it
Mhm.
once the case is over. Why should we have a separate indice and put all of this permanently in is something we don't know. So, for example, when it comes to purging of data as well from the data bank, the provisions of the bill are that once the case is closed, anyone who's not an offender can write through the magistrate to get their data purged from the data
Okay.
bank. Now, obviously, you might not even know your data is in the data bank because it was picked up from the crime scene and you did not you weren't even there, right? So you have no way of removing that data, which makes it really, yeah, it doesn't. And I don't understand why we need to keep that data once the case is solved. So, in my opinion, we should not have a crime scene index at all.
When you say that the person might not even know that his DNA sample was picked up from the scene, are you saying that the consent won't be taken here before like entering that
You don't
game?
even know, no. So, you, for example, consider fingerprints, right? You see a lot of these in serials, we see people picking up fingerprints and then they try to match it against a database, right?
Right.
Just think about that and think about the fact that there'll be DNA like around everywhere. They have picked up a few dozen DNA samples. They don't know whom they belong to unless it's a match in the system, and we don't have a DNA database currently. And the idea is not to form a DNA database of all the Indians that are in the country, right?
Yeah.
That is something that definitely should not be done. But so they cannot match. So whose consent can they take?
Right. Yeah, because there's nothing to match it against.
Yeah, they don't know whose sample it is to take consent from.
Yeah, that is problematic.
I think it is really scary that there is no purging mechanism for it. They should be automatically purged.
Yeah. So another problem that is associated with the bill is that there is no clear distinction when it comes to use of DNA technology for civil purposes and criminal investigation purposes. So what exactly is the confusion here?
Right. So the scope of the bill has been a confusion right from the beginning. There are two things. A, when you're looking at setting laboratory standards for how you create a DNA profile, you probably want all of those labs which do civil cases, for example, paternity suits, to also follow the same standard. So when it comes to actual laboratory related regulation, they all fall in the same bucket, mostly because also a lot of the labs which do civil suits will also do criminal cases. So they will have to follow the same kind of accreditation standards for both kind of cases. Uh, the bill does not specifically say that samples collected from civil suits will not be put into a data bank, right? It suggests the indices for which data will be stored, under which you cannot really have the DNA samples which are derived from which are derived during civil cases. But the way the bill has been written, one can interpret it to say that all DNA profiles have to be sent to the DNA data bank. That's where the confusion is. And the confusion goes beyond that. It's not just civil versus criminal forensic studies. It is also anyone who's doing DNA testing could potentially come under this bill. So, for example, any academic lab which does DNA sequencing to look at cancer, for example, any private company which does genetic screening to look at a variety of diseases, which is very common, it's something that we are encouraging, could come under the ambit of this bill. As in the bill could be interpreted in that way that all of them come under that ambit. And then they might also have to send samples to the DNA data bank. I don't think any of this was the intention of the bill. It is just the way it has been worded. And I think the parliamentary committee has noted that, and they have made changes in the bill they've suggested changes in the bill to limit the scope of the bill only to the justice delivery system, as well as only to DNA profiling and not to DNA testing. And I hope that when this bill comes up for debate in Lok Sabha, those changes are adopted.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how just the wording of bill can actually change the provision of the bill itself. So,
well, that's the most powerful thing in the bill, right? It's the words.
Yeah. Okay. So, moving forward, the report, the standing committee report, it mentioned that there should be only one data bank at the national level, and like there's no need for regional data banks because it will come at the cost of interoperability, and there will be a lot of confusion as to which data is in which bank. So, what is the rationale behind this?
Right, I think the original bill tried to create multiple copies of the data. So you could have indices at the level of a laboratory, you will have a regional data bank, and then you'll have a national data bank, which would have data from all the regional data banks. And obviously, what that kind of layered data duplicity means is that you could have errors creeping in, and therefore it was recommended that we remove all of the other data banks. We don't really need all data banks, like all data to be stored in three places. We definitely don't want the laboratories to be storing any data once the data has been sent to the data bank, right? Because the lab should be only be testing and moving on to other samples. So those are the changes that have come through even in the committee's report. So they talk about scrapping all of the other regional data banks. We only have one, the national level one. That labs should not be having their own storage systems at all, which I think is a good move because it will just improve integrity of the data and decrease any errors that might creep in.
But when you said that labs shouldn't be having their own storage system, I mean, I thought when they talked about regional data bank, it would be at like state government level or something like that. I didn't think it
Yeah,
would be
yeah,
in
yeah.
the
So you will have it
capacity
at
of lab.
different levels. You will have the labs having storing data on their own for some time, then the regional data bank, and then the national data bank.
Oh, okay. So, can you tell us more about what the bill does not address? Like, what should have been added to the bill, but it does not there?
Right. I think there have been a lot of concerns that have been raised about the bill in terms of privacy. Those I won't go into because I'm not a subject matter expert there. The two things that concern that were my concerns were the capacity of to do DNA profiling in the country. Uh, we are currently we currently have like 15 to 18 laboratories which do DNA testing. And we're looking at less than 3,000 cases per year, which is only 2 to 3% of the total need. So we need more capacity, which I mean, and that enabling ecosystem has not been facilitated by the bill at all. And it doesn't take into account that if you're going to set up a DNA data bank, and a lot of the justice delivery is going to hinge on this one system, how does the lack of capacity impact that? Will cases be stalled? How are we going to address any of that? So, one of our recommendations was actually to stagger the implementation of the bill and to say that let's have it for missing persons first, because that's a very clear cut use of technology. The science is extremely firm on how it can be used, what are the caveats, etc. A lot of concerns about consent and privacy can be addressed much better. So let's begin with those, and then move on to see whether criminal justice can also be impacted using such a technology, and the fact that we will have a database. So those concerns have not really been addressed. The other point was that we have seen over the past few months an increasing dependence on DNA technology to identify criminals. And DNA technology can only be corroborative evidence. It can only say a person might have been at a crime scene because their DNA was there. It does not actually prove that the person was at the crime scene. It doesn't even prove that the person committed the crime. And that training about the science and how that science can be interpreted is something that everyone in the justice delivery system needs to be given, because in the absence of that, as a technology, it seems great that you can actually see that this person might have been at the crime scene. And we have seen certain cases in which sentences have been given based on the fact that someone's DNA was at a particular crime scene, which is not correct. So that sensitization of how that technology can be used, how it can be interpreted, is very necessary. And I wished that this bill kind of tried to address that concern in some way. The bill leaves a lot to this DNA regulatory board, which is going to be formed once the bill is passed. So a lot of regulations will come from there, and so I hope at least there will be some kind of training module that is set up. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. And finally, I think, yeah, it doesn't really talk about the effectiveness of having such a bill. So, as I said, there are two main use cases for having a data bank. A is figuring out or identifying missing people, right? Uh, as per our National Crime Records Bureau, we have about 40,000 unidentified bodies per year that need identification, and a data bank might be useful there. When it comes to repeat offenders, India does not have a particularly high rate of recidivism. What that means is that our repeat offenders rate is low, and if that's the case, the utility of having such a data bank has to be investigated because it will come at a cost, right? The data bank will come at cost. There are significant risks to privacy that have been highlighted. What is the benefit that we are getting in return of setting this up is something that we have to figure out.
Right.
Just on the issue of prices, there's a clause in the bill that says that there will be a ceiling cap of 25,000 rupees for for the cost of the test. We really don't know why that has been put in, or why the bill needs to like hardwire that in. So the committee has also recognized this and suggested that that be taken out completely. And I'm hoping that that is also something that the Lok Sabha adopts.
So to sum up, it means that the people in the judiciary need to be more sensitized towards the use of DNA technology, and the provisions in the bill need to be more clearly defined. Is that right?
Right. I mean, there's some clauses around consent for who can get consent, when can the magistrate overrule the need for consent, um, how do we purge data. Those are essential. The purging of data is something else that the committee report highlights and suggests that there be other mechanisms of purging as well, not just relying on whoever it is that has been accused of putting in the writing that they need their data to be purged. I mean, I don't understand why we need to have a permanent data bank of, say, suspects in crime scenes. Those should really be purged.
Yeah, and I think I mean the recent bills that have been that have been introduced, I think a lot of them depend on the passage of data protection bill. I mean, we don't have any law pertaining to data protection, and I think like it is affecting all other regulations and acts as well. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, so this has been a point that has been raised multiple times in the context of the DNA bill as well. And if you actually look at the report, there are a few dissenting notes which also talk about this and the necessity of having the privacy bill come in before the DNA bill. In my opinion, that call also will depend on what all goes into the DNA data bank. Uh, as it is in the bill, if that entire structure is going to come in the way the bill states it, then yes, I would like to see the data protection bill come in before this one. Um, but if we make changes to the bill by limiting its scope, by limiting what it can do, we can probably bring this bill in even while waiting for the personal data protection bill to come in.
So thank you, Shambhavi, so much for giving this wonderful insights on this DNA technology regulation bill. The report that has been released by the Parliamentary Standing Committee and the concerns that they have addressed, I hope they get resolved in the Lok Sabha, and when the bill is actually passed, the suggestions, the recommendations provided by the report are incorporated in it. So thank you, Shambhavi, and thank you to all listeners for listening to All Things Policy.
Thank you.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Storytel and TheWholeTruthFoods.com. So, great week on the network. Number of really interesting shows for you guys to check out. Here are a couple of the ones that I would like to highlight for you. Check out This Round Is On Me. Gauri Devi Dayal talks to her husband Jay Yusuf about mixing business and pleasure. They're the husband and wife business partners at Food Matters Company. Give it a shot. Really fun show. On Naan Curry, they speak about chaat, the queen of the street foods. A fun episode. They canvass the beauty and romance of street food, its cultural importance in a city, and they also discuss the unfortunate harassment that street vendors sometimes go through. On Paisa Vaisa, we had Madhuchanda. They joined Anupam talking about the budget and the different aspects of it. Storytellers and Storytellers features Shreyansh Pandey, creator of Gulak, a great conversation and some interesting insights into facilitating and nurturing writers. Do check that out. On Thale Harate, the Kannada podcast, Mansi Prasad spoke to Pawan Srinath about the history and appreciation of Indian music. It's a really interesting conversation. They discuss classical music and how it evolved in India, what are the various musical instruments and how they developed. Really fun, interesting stuff. And with that, I hope to see you again next week.
जिंदगी डायरीज के पन्नों में कुछ पुरानी यादें, समुंदर किनारे झूमते दरख्त, जवान दिल की धड़कनें और अनजान मुलाकातें हैं। तो आइए खोलिए मेरे साथ जिंदगी डायरी के पन्ने और साथ ही खुलकर जीते हैं जिंदगी। आप सुन सकते हैं जिंदगी डायरीज IVM पॉडकास्ट ऐप या वेबसाइट पर, या जहां कहीं से भी आप अपने पॉडकास्ट सुनते हो।